Are you ready? Well, we've got two parts to cover in this lesson, in lesson 3.5. The discriminant, and then the solving a quadratic by the quadratic formula. First off, we're going to look at the discriminant. Now, what the discriminant does is tells you what type and how many solutions your quadratic will have. You're always going to make sure that your quadratic equation is in standard form and it's equal to 0. The discriminant is b squared minus 4 times a times c. There are three possible outcomes. The value will either be greater than 0, equal to 0, or less than 0. When you get one that is greater than 0, your answer will be a positive number. When your answer is less than 0, you're going to get a negative number. Let's take a look at three different examples. Now, I also want to show you what the graph of this will look like. If it's positive, your graph is touching the x-axis at two places. Now, the graph can open up or the graph can open down. When you get the answer where it's equal to 0, your graph is touching the x-axis one time. Again, it can open up or open down. And if you get a negative number for your discriminant, it never crosses the x-axis. Again, it can open up or open down, but it is never crossing the x-axis. So let's take a look at an example. Negative 3x squared plus 11x minus 10 equals 0. In order to do this problem, what I need to do is make sure that I've got everything equal to one side. And on this one I do. My a value is negative 3, my b value is 11, and my c value is negative 10. Now we're going to plug it into b squared minus 4ac. b is 11 minus 4 times negative 3 times negative 10. You type all of this into your calculator. Now on this 11, if it had a negative sign, I would want to make sure it has parentheses. So on this one, my discriminant, my b squared minus 4ac gives me the answer of 1. This number is greater than 0. Since it's greater than 0, it has two real solutions. And remember, solutions are the same thing as roots, because that's telling me that it crosses the x-axis in two places. So it has two real roots because my discriminant was greater than 0. Let's look at an example where b squared minus 4ac ends up being equal to 0, and it's going to touch it only one time. Alright, my example, 5x squared minus 10x plus 5 equals 0. So I make sure that everything's on one side and it's all equal to 0. A is 5, b is negative 10, and my c value is 5. So I'm going to plug it into b squared minus 4ac. Make sure you're writing all of this down. Parentheses, negative 10 squared minus 4 times 5 times 5. I type this all into my calculator, and I get that the discriminant is equal to 0. When you get it equal to 0, that means that you have one real solution, which is why it only touches the graph that one time. Usually for my students in the past, to help them remember this, I do a bold 0 here and a bold capital O on 1. Alright, so when do we get that the b squared minus 4ac is less than 0? Let's look at an example. 4x squared minus x plus 2 equals 0. Identify your a, b, and c. Now plug it into b squared minus 4ac. Parentheses around that negative 1. And you type all of this into the calculator. My discriminant is equal to negative 31. This number is less than 0. I got a negative number. So I have 2 complex solutions. Complex solutions, that's just another way of saying imaginary solutions. One way to help you remember these notes is to make a foldable. Here's a foldable that I've used in the past where you just take a sheet of paper, you create 3 little flaps. You can get a positive, a 0, or a negative. Down here at the bottom I put what the discriminant is and the formula. It tells us how many and what type of roots. Now let's look at solving by using the quadratic formula. This is a very intimidating formula. So what I want to do is identify my A, B, and C value. On this problem it was all set equal to 0. The quadratic formula. Do you see that underneath this radical is our discriminant, b squared minus 4ac? Alright, now it's time for us to substitute everything in. Alright, I've substituted everything in. Now you really want to take just a little bit at a time and simplify it. Don't try to type it all into your calculator at once. So the first thing we can simplify is this opposite of negative 6. That means it makes it a positive 6. This negative b changes the sign of whatever b value you started off with. Plus minus the square root of this negative 6 squared. Any number that I plug in right here, when I square it, I am always going to get a positive number. So negative 6 squared, that's 36. The next thing I'm going to do is multiply all 3 numbers. So do you see that I'm going to type in all 3 of them at the same time? Negative 4 times 1 times 3. All of these 3 numbers, including that sign. So that's a minus 12. All over 2 times 1. I can simplify that. The next thing we're going to do is simplify this radicand. I've got a little bit of room over here. 6 plus or minus the square root of, so again in your calculator we're looking at 36 take away 12. Alright, now it's time for us to simplify a little bit further with our calculator, and we're going to split up the 2. The 2 goes underneath each one of these items, so think of it as 6 over 2 plus minus, now that square root of 24, we can use this TI-36X Pro to help us out. Remember, you can type it in and it tells you, look, 2 squared is 6. And that's also over 2. Now we can simplify. The 6 and this 2 reduce, and these 2's on the outside reduce. So our answer is 3 plus or minus 1 squared is 6. Normally we don't write the 1, so you would see it 3 plus or minus the square root of 6. Okay, we've got everything equal to the 0, so let's identify our A. That's 1. B is 9, and C is 10. Make sure you're writing all of this down. We're going to plug this into the quadratic formula. So x equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times 10, all over 2 times 1. We're going to simplify each little step just a little bit at a time. Negative 9 plus or minus the square root of. You could probably go ahead and type all that into your calculator. It'll save you a step. So let me show you. So 9 squared minus 4 parentheses 1 parentheses 10. That'll save you a step. All over 2 times 1. And we're going to split this up to see if we can simplify anything. Negative 9 over 2 plus minus, now look at square root of 41. In your calculator, it just spits it right back out to you. So there's nothing I can simplify on this one. This is my final answer. Alright, one more example. Okay, on this problem, I need to get it equal to 0. So I've got to move the 5x to the other side. To move a positive 5x, we're going to have to subtract 5x. I'll need to write this in standard form. So 2x squared minus 5x plus 4 is now equal to 0. Now it's okay for us to identify our A, B, and C values. Okay, so let's plug this in. Negative b, so that changes the sign, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Write that down. Now let's simplify in our calculator. Not all at once, just a little bit at a time. Let's go ahead and put this under the radical, which is known as our discriminant, into the calculator. We'll make the calculator do the work for us. All over 4. Now it's time for us to split this up and see what can simplify. Negative 5 goes over 4. Plus, minus, square root of negative 7 over 4. Now let's take a look. Negative 5 over 4, we're not going to change that to a mixed number, so you're going to leave that like it is. But here we are, we have a negative under the radical. It comes out as an I. Remember from the last unit? So negative 5/4 plus or minus I square root of 7 over 4. This is our final answer.